Hello, everyone. My name's Arsh Ellahi, and I'm online tonight with friend and business partner of mine tonight, to the name of Neil McCoy-Ward. Neil, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here, Ash. Good evening. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, brilliant. Well, first thing that we do, what we're going to be doing tonight is we're going to be talking, well, not so much talking, but we're going to be answering a lot of the questions that you've been firing over to us during the day, and I'm hoping that you've got some pretty direct questions to ask us tonight. So, but before we do that, what I'd like you to do is in the far right hand side of your screen, in the far right hand side of your screen, if you can just let me know whether you can hear us correctly, but more importantly, can you see the slides on the screen? Okay, brilliant. Right, okay. So far, yeah, everyone's saying that they can hear and they can see. Yeah, okay, brilliant. Right, okay. So tonight it's not so much a case of us telling you about what rent to rent is. I'm hoping, I'll be asking you what your experience is shortly. And going forward, we're going to be talking about a Q&A session. So hopefully, let's see what you come up with. I want you to really dig deep and find some questions, something that you may have thought of. Yeah, I need the answer to that. And tonight we're going to answer it. So let's move on. So, not too much about me. I run a group of, I think it's 12 companies now with my brother and business partner, Arsh Ellahi. One thing that I've put in here that I'm now an Amazon bestseller. So I launched the book earlier this year, and over a period, I think it's between 5 and 6 months, it had a steady growth of sales. And a couple of weeks ago, I was nominated as an Amazon bestseller in property in general. So that's quite an achievement, if I'm honest. Um, and me and Aki are both landlords and letting agents. We became an accidental letting agent back in 2008. We've been letting property since 1973, which technically isn't correct because I wasn't born until 1980. But now we've got well in excess of 500 tenants on benefits. We've got a very high 100% rent collection record and a very high 98% occupancy rate. So one of the things that I was very pleased about, and back in 2013, and I can't believe it's been just over 2.5 years, that I was approached by YPN, and they asked me if I'd write a few articles for them. And ever since I wrote the first one, it was well received, and I've been writing the articles for them pretty much every month they're on. I thought it's fitting that we talked about this one tonight. It's about rent to rent, and is it actually worth the hype once you take that into consideration all the things that you're going to pay for utilities? Is it worth it? And I looked at the figures of three properties that were generating well in excess of £1,000 a month. So it is possible, and it all comes down to, and we'll be talking about it, the management of it tonight. So that's enough about me. Online tonight, we've got someone, and I want Neil to keep it short and sharp because we want to keep this hour, we want to keep this webinar to the hour. So I'm going to let Neil introduce himself, tell you a little bit about who he is and what he does. So Neil, over to you.
Thanks, Ash. And again, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I can see there's still people logging in now, so that's fantastic. um, Very similar to Ash, I actually started as a landlord, but only 10 years ago for myself. It was 2005, May of 2005, actually, when I bought my first buy-to-let property. That's when buy-to-let mortgages were starting to come in, because prior to that, it was mainly resi mortgages. And I got started by watching Sarah Beanie on the TV on Property Ladder, and it was very easy back then. I actually made a post about this this week. It was very easy back then to build a large portfolio of houses because the market was growing so quickly. All you had to do was buy a property that wasn't in great condition, do a really basic refurbishment on it, and then the valuer would come back out and add tens of thousands of pounds on top of it. So all you then did was release that equity and buy another house. So it was fantastic back then. You also had 110% mortgages. So a lot of time when you see people with big portfolios now that started 10 years ago, that's usually how they did it. So it is a little bit more tricky now, and that's why Arsh and I are going to be talking about the rent to rent strategy this evening. And here's the thing, I pretty much do nearly all my time now is rent to rent in terms of property time. Some deal sourcing as well, but it's pretty much rent to rent. So you've got to ask yourself, if I've got all this experience with property and I've done everything from normal right up to commercial and development type work, why is it that I focus on rent to rent then when I've got the cash behind me to do all these other things? And you'll find out tonight why rent to rent I recommend to absolutely everyone. It's such a fantastic strategy. The other things that I'm most well known for, which we won't be going into tonight, is that I do work as a professional speaker all around the world. I'm an entrepreneur with many different companies, but mainly my company is the Forward Thinking Group, which I won't talk about tonight, but that's really what I do as an entrepreneur and sales trainer. So we'll bring some of the sales training in today, and I'll show you why it's so important to have strong marketing and negotiation skills, because without these skills, and you will learn these very easily, it's very difficult if you haven't got these skills to get ahead in property. So I'll show you as well how to do that really simply later on. So that's enough for me, Arsh. I'll let you continue.
Okay, so actually, Neil, before you stop, one thing that I think that you're very good at explaining is the reason why and what our commitment is to people that are online tonight. So if you just tell them a little bit about why people think we can do it.
Yeah, great. Well, here's the thing with Arsh and I, we've been doing property for so long now that we've become very successful at what we do. And what we really love, what's our passion, what inspires us, is to share this with other people. So you'll see that we'll even give you our mobile phone numbers for anyone that wants some tips or advice or help. And everything we do is very low cost. We try and help as many people as we can, because every day I get phone calls, I get messages, I get emails saying, I hate my job, I want to spend more time with my family, my health is deteriorating, all these different reasons. And it really does affect me, because I think it's so simple to just escape that lifestyle that you don't want and get into this lifestyle where you can have a fantastic business which you don't even have to run yourself. For me, I have a property manager that takes care of everything for me. So I spend maybe 2 hours a week on this business, which generates 5 figures a month, 6 figures a year, and I hardly do anything on it. So that's really our commitment to you, is that if you do spend time with us and you really decide that this is something you want to do, Arsh and I will help you as much as we can so that you can get maybe not to where we are because of the sheer experience we've got, but you can certainly get some way towards that. And this is the other part to it. A lot of people talk about happiness all the time, and they say money won't buy you happiness, and that's true. But, and here's where the but comes in, money will enable you to do all the things that generate happiness. So here's just a few on screen you can see. So there's travel there, there's better health. How can you say you have perfect health if you commute 2 hours each way to work, you're stressed, your boss is putting all this pressure on you, you're doing something that you know deep down in your heart is not what you should be doing in life. You're not spending enough time with your families, relationships are breaking down, not enough time for leisure and things like that. I'm not here to give a lecture. All I'll say is you'll know yourself if the life you're living right now is not where you want to be. So Arsh and I, we're just so committed to helping people to get away from that and get to the life where you want to be, because it isn't that complicated. A lot of people think it's really difficult to get there, but it's actually not if you've got the right person that's guiding you along the way. So I'll pass back over to Arsh now.
Okay, and just moving on from that, so Neil's give you a couple of examples as to why people do the things that they do. And what I'd like to know is, you're here for a reason tonight. I want to know what your reason is. Why have you decided to join this webinar? What interests you about rent to rent? What interests you about property? So if you can, just in the far right hand side on your screen, just type in, what's your reason for doing this? Why do you want to do this? So just having a quick look at some of the responses that are coming in. So spend more time with the family. It's a low cash in strategy, financial freedom. Okay, so some people want to travel a little bit more. Someone said that they're a mother of 3 and an architect, which is interesting. No capital need to raise rental income. Traveling, find it hard to raise deposits for buy to let, so this would be a great entry model. Have access to do what I want in life. Okay, so really it is very much lifestyle focused. So let's keep moving on. So one thing I forgot to ask you to do is, if you can, just let me know, just so that I can guide this webinar according to the people that we've got on it tonight. What's your experience with rent to rent? Are you experienced? Are you complete beginner? Are you complete beginner to property full stop? Just so that I know exactly to what detail I need to tell you where we are. Okay. So some people say that they're beginner at rent to rent, but we've got 3 properties, beginner on rent to rent. Know a little bit about it. Complete beginner. Beginner has 3 HMOs. I'm a landlord, but never done rent to rent. Okay, so majority is beginner. So what we're going to do, we're going to start right from the very basic. So in rent to rent, we've got 3 parties involved. We've got the landlord who owns the property. We've got you, who's the prospect in taking the property off the landlord. And then you've got the third person who's going to be the tenants who are going to be renting the property off you. Now that's very straightforward. And in simple terms, how rent to rent works is that you rent the property off the landlord, you rent the property from the landlord. You may have to do a slight refurbishment project on the property, and then you rent the property out for on a room by room basis, which would hopefully give you a lot more than what you're giving the landlord, which would give you your profit per calendar month. And the reason why I personally like rent to rent is very simple. Now someone's just put that they've got 20. Now I'm assuming they mean 20 buy to lets. And when their property, or if this property is vacant as a single let, which we will all have at some point, when that property is vacant, we will still have costs ongoing. So if you've got a mortgage on there, you will still have a mortgage cost to pay every month. Unfortunately, the mortgage company won't let you have a break for every time the property is vacant, because that would be fantastic if they did. Then on top of that, you may have to pay council tax as well as the other bills that are outgoing whilst the property is vacant. Now, if you work on the basis that on an average buy to let, the cash flow is circa around £200 a month. Now, over a year, that's £2,400 a month. Now, if a property is vacant for 1 month, you've just actually lost money. So after you've taken out the council tax and all the other bits and pieces, and over a year, if you add in voids, bad debt and maintenance, in actual fact, majority of the buy-to-lets just pretty much cover themselves, which isn't the reason why we get into property, because we get into property for this thing called financial freedom. And personally, I'm a big advocate for HMOs. I've been doing HMOs for a long time, well in excess of 15 years. And I can take you around some of my HMOs that have got 4 bedrooms, which generate £20,000 a year, right up to a monster 23 bed, which generates well in excess of 130, well in excess of £120,000 a year. So when a single let is vacant, it's not generating any income. And for the example, let's just use that it's got 4 bedrooms on the first floor, then you've got a living room, a dining room, a kitchen and a bathroom. Now, if you were to multi-let this property, potentially you don't need 2 reception rooms, so you could use one of the rooms on the ground floor as another lettable room. So you've got 4 bedrooms on the first floor, 1 on the ground floor. Then you've got a living room, which would be a communal lounge, communal kitchen and communal bathroom. Now, on 5 lettable rooms at £400 a month, the calculations work out that you're going to be generating approximately £2,000 a month on full occupancy. Now let's take out the rent that you've got to pay the landlord, because remember, you're renting the property off the landlord. You haven't purchased the property. Let's just say on average you'll be paying £850 per month to the landlord. Now, on standard HMOs, the rule is that it should predominantly be all-inclusive model. So it should include council tax, water rates, electricity, gas, potentially broadband, cleaner, and other bits and pieces. So let's just take an average that the cost for that property is going to be around £350 a month. Now, out of the income, take out your costs, which is £1,200, which will give you a profit of £800 per month. Now, £800 a month over a year is 9,600. Now, the way that I calculate it is that 9,600, just imagine that you take it, let's just say on an example where Neil takes it on for 3 years, times that by 3 years, that's going to produce you an income of 28,800. Now, if you do what I do and take it on by 7 years, that property would produce just under £70,000 for a property that you don't own, you've never owned, you have no intention of owning, but just purely using it as a cash cow. Now, that's £67,000 that you generate over that certain period of time, you could then use to potentially purchase properties for your own portfolio. You could use that money as cash flow, or you could use it for some of the reasons that you mentioned earlier. So far, are you all with me? I'm hoping that I haven't lost anyone yet, because this is pretty basic stuff. Okay, everyone's saying, yeah, that's still with me? Okay, so the reason why so many people like rent to rent is because there is no mortgage required, which means that you don't have to deal with mortgage brokers, you don't have to deal with valuations or anything like that, which means that there's no solicitors involved. The contracts that we put in place is something called a management contract, which we'll be talking about in a short while. And as you're not purchasing the property, there's no deposit required, which means let's just work on the basis that on average of a standard purchase price of £100,000, if you go and get a 75% loan to value product, means that they would lend you £75,000, which means that you would need a £25,000 deposit, plus your valuation fee, plus your solicitor's fee. Technically speaking, you'll need circa around £30,000. But when you're doing rent to rent, because you're not buying it, you don't require any of that. You may need a bit of capital up front just to potentially pay a deposit, potentially pay a letting agent's fee if that's a route that you want to go down, and possibly do a bit of a refurb. But more importantly, the reason why I like rent to rent is because it's very easy for you to get involved. You can walk up to a property, excuse me, you can walk up to a landlord with a property today, shake his hand, take his keys off him today, start work on it tomorrow, and it instantly creates your business. Now, in a nutshell, that is rent to rent. There's no, I'm not here to tell you that it's complicated. I'm not here to try and sell you a dream. That is rent to rent in a nutshell. And we've covered that pretty much within about 15 minutes. So, here's the basics. Or, I'll tell you what, I'll hand you back over to Neil for this section. Neil, are you still with me?
Yeah, I'm here, Ash. Yeah, as you can see, I'm the numbers man in the business relationship. So here's the ROI. So ROI stands for return on investment. So if you look at this as an example, let's say you take on a property such as the one I took on last week. For any of you who saw my Facebook post today, and you'll see that house was an absolute bomb site. Each room was full of rubbish. It was absolutely full. The tenants had just packed up and left. We had to get a massive skip, huge skip, and actually clear that. So the refurbishment on that property, once we've cleared it, put a new carpet down and painted it, because we can use a lot of the furniture still, we're probably looking around the £2,000 mark. So this figure works perfectly for this example. So if you were to spend £2,000 on a property that needed a light refurbishment, and you were making a £600 profit per calendar month, so if you think back over the last 10 minutes what Arsh has just explained, so just think that a property that you've taken on is making £600 every month. your annual profit, £600 times 12 months is £7,200. So that's your net profit. So there's nothing coming out of that. That's net. So if you then take the 7,200 profit, divide that by the 2,000 that you invested into the house, you are making a 360% return on your investment. I don't know anywhere else, any other investment that will guarantee you a 360% return. Most of the banks won't even give you 5% right now, and you're getting 360%. So then if you think about, in fact, go to the next slide, Ash, see if we've got some more on this. So if you think about a 3-year contract then, that's over 1,000% return on investment coming back to you. Just from your £2,000 invested. You control the asset, so the landlord can't take that property back from you. And this is usually a question that comes up, what if the landlord wants the property back? So if that's a question, save that for about 10 minutes time, and I'll cover that as well. But if you compare that to most investors, what they're doing, where they're getting a buy-to-let property, and let's take a really low-cost property. Let's say it's only £100,000, which isn't many areas these days. But let's say it's a £100,000 property, and as a landlord, you put in a 25% deposit. So there's £25,000 cash into that straight away. Forget all the rest of the legal fees and everything else and the refurbishment. 25,000 has gone in straight away, which is unavoidable. It has to go in. And then you compare that to what we've just covered. Your return isn't going to be anywhere near 360%. You're looking between 5 and 12% return. So now do you see why I rave so much about this strategy? Why would I spend £25,000 owning an asset which, if you live through the 2008 crash, which everyone online will have done, you know what can happen. A lot of people were absolutely crippled by that crash. So and Arsh, we've both looked at how can we protect ourselves for the future. And for me, rent to rent is that strategy. If a property goes down in value, if there's another crash, I'm not going to be affected at all. I'm going to still make the money that I'm making right now every single month. I've got no risk at all. And if the property goes up in value, well, that's great for the landlord. But if I own that property, well, I'm going to have, for me, it's not really a strategy that I'm looking into. That's the way I think I'll put it. It's not a strategy. I'm not in it for the long-term appreciation, because I'd rather just make a fortune from the rent to rent every single month and bank that cash or invest it in other things. So in my case, I invest that cash in other businesses and the like. So everyone will have a different strategy. You can do it however you like. I'm just sharing this is the way I do it. Arsh's strategy is slightly different. He buys. At the moment, I'm selling my property. So it's each to their own. There is no right or wrong way to do it. But just coming back to the ROI, if you can get 1,000% over 3 years, why would you invest 50 grand, 100 grand, 150 grand in houses and get a lower ROI? It doesn't really make financial sense to me. Arsh?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I'm hoping that everyone's taken that point on board, because something that really follows on quite nicely is that one of the most successful people in the world is Nelson Rockefeller from the Rockefeller family. And what he quoted was, the secret to success is to own nothing but to control everything. And the one thing that I come across a quote on is that when you look at the businesses as of today, you'll notice that a lot of the businesses that are doing extremely well are businesses that aren't actually owning any of the assets. So if we look at Facebook, one of the biggest companies in the world, and they don't actually own any content. They're reliant on us to put the content to generate the traffic. Now, if you have a look at another one, Uber taxis that have come out relatively recently, they don't actually own any taxis. And then the third one, which is probably one of the most successful, is Airbnb. They don't actually own any of the properties. So it's just something for you to think about there. So yeah, the secret to success is to own nothing but to control everything, and that's where you want to be. So that's pretty much your introduction into rent to rent, because what we want to get down to, and what the one thing that we said that we were going to cover tonight, is a detailed Q&A session. So I'm pretty much armored up, ready for any question that you can throw at us, as well as Neil is. So let's see what you can do. So just coming through with some of the questions. Okay, so do we need to ask permission of a lender as the mortgage is residential? Right, okay, so Nisreen, first question that's come through is that do we need to ask permission of the lenders? Now, here's a question. Because if they're a landlord already, technically speaking, they should already have permission to let the property out, which will act in the form of a buy-to-let mortgage. Now, if they've got a residential mortgage, unfortunately, they cannot let the property out full stop. They need to go off and get something called a consent to let. Now, with the contracts that we use, we don't need we don't need consent to let or further clarification from the buy-to-let lender, because the management agreements that we've had drafted is pretty similar to something that a letting agency would use. And the reason why we say that is because we're acting almost, you could say, and to put it bluntly, almost like a glorified letting agency, where we manage it on behalf of the landlord, but we guarantee them a net rent. So in that respect, you wouldn't need any further clarification. Okay, so I'm hoping that helps. Now, Neil?
Ash, yeah, I think it might work really well tonight. I think someone said this last time. If with each question we both sort of answer that, because we both have very individual spins on things. So if that's all right with you, I'd like to sort of answer that as well.
Yeah.
So following on what Arsh said there, absolutely spot on, and he is correct. Our contract is that of a letting agent, almost identical. That's how we had it drafted. So if you were to look at that agreement and you were to compare that to a letting agent agreement, there's hardly any difference at all. It's very negligible. Like Arsh said, it's the fact that we guarantee the rent. So that really is it. And you've got to think about it like this, because a lot of people get caught up in the intricate details of this. How often have you let a property to a letting agent and they've said, Mr. Jones, could I just see your mortgage documents, your insurance documents, just to check that you can let this property out? It doesn't happen. It would never happen. And if you look at the majority of houses around the country anyway, you never see any agents that, for any of the lettable properties, you never see any agents going around and checking all the details and all of that. It just doesn't happen. So in our agreement, we actually have got ourselves covered. So it specifies several different points throughout that agreement, throughout that contract, that is completely up to the landlord. We advise on there what they should do, but and say they should get legal advice before signing this. But they even sign right at the end to say, I hereby agree that this I am eligible to enter into this agreement with my current mortgage terms and conditions. So what you've done is you took the emphasis off you and you've put it onto the landlord there. So he or she is their responsibility at the end of the day. And I'm emphasizing this point so much because it comes up all the time. And what you usually see when you ask someone that trains rent to rent this, they completely swerve it. They will not answer this question because they don't want to land themselves in any trouble. So what Arsh and I did, we said, right, how can we, not get around this, but how can we stop this coming up all the time? So that's why we designed the contract in that way. So now we've put the emphasis off us, responsibility is onto the landlord, and it's for them to deal with. If they're going to speak to their mortgage lender and things like that, it's completely up to them. However, this is the other point I want to make. People that haven't got experience in rent to rent won't know this. The only reason Arsh and I know this is because we've got so many houses between us. We've got dozens and dozens and dozens of houses between us. And this is something quite interesting. So this is worth noting down. most landlords that will enter into this agreement with you are not going to be 30-year-olds. They're not going to be 35. They're not going to be 40. Most of them are 60 and above. The majority of my landlords are over 60. Because if you think about it, a 30-year-old isn't interested in handing you their property. They want to get stuck in themselves. If there's anyone 30 or 40 below that's on this webinar, you know yourself, you want to get stuck in. You don't want to hand it over to someone else. But when you reach 60, 65 retirement age, you're at that time in your life where you don't want to be messing around. You don't want to be called out on the weekend or at midnight. Someone's locked their keys, they're out the house. They don't want to be dealing with the boiler, or the fuse box is tripped. They want to hand it all over. So, coming back to the original point, those sort of landlords don't often have mortgages. So that's quite interesting. With all of my houses, I would say 25%, maybe even 20% have got mortgages on. All the rest are owned outright by landlords who are in their 60s upwards. So that's something really key to know, because you would never know that unless you actually had that experience of having a lot of houses. So it's just worth taking that on board. Okay, Ash, let's go to the next question.
Okay. Now, someone's put that we've got someone that's quite experienced because they've got 20 rent-to-rent properties, but they find that referencing has always been a problem when letting through a letting agent. Now, so it means that they're letting a property through a letting agent, in essence, they're acting as a tenant through its letting agent through the company under a company let agreement. Can you explain to the audience how best then to clear referencing as a company let without the need to act as a personal guarantor? Right, that's quite difficult. The reason that's quite difficult is because what a letting agent asks for, you have no control over. So, for argument's sake, now one of the things that me and Neil do, and one of the things that we actually teach, is to go direct to vendor every step of the way. Now, I appreciate that you've done really well. You've got 20 rent-to-rent properties, which technically speaking, if you've got 5 properties, 5 tenants in each, you've built up yourself quite a nice little business of 100 tenants. And for that, I really do applaud you. But when you go direct to an agent, I'm assuming you would have paid 20 lots of reference fees, you would have paid 20 lots of deposits, 20 lots of all the other fees, admin fees, you name it. So you would have actually spent a lot of money, which you wouldn't have had to do if you went direct to a landlord. Like for any of my rent-to-rent, I've only ever had to pay a deposit on one property. All the other properties, I've refused to pay a deposit. And the reason why I paid the deposit on the one is because I really wanted it. And that was going to be the deal breaker. Now, with regards, going back to your question, is that how's the best way of clearing as a company let without the need to act as a personal guarantor? The only way that you can do that, and I would get advice from your accountants, is to provide solid references. So, for argument's sake, people like tradespeople that you've been doing work with. Now, if I ever need a reference or a reference as character, what I can do is the companies that I spend tens of thousands of pounds with every month. So my wholesalers that we deal with, so electrical wholesalers, the plumbers wholesalers, as well as my accountant, as well as my solicitor. The accountant is going to be the big part because they know the numbers that your business is turning over through, which I'm assuming is the accounts that you file. So they'll be able to provide accountant's reference to saying that, yeah, okay, Russell has got a solid business. He's been trading for 3 years, and over the last 3 years, it's been turning over X with a profit of X. But other than that, there's no way of you getting round asking what a letting agent will want. If their criteria, if the processes that they've set up is that they require a reference for a company, and unfortunately, the one thing that you're going to find is that with company lets, companies can disappear overnight. So and the reason why they're doing it is so that if your company does disappear overnight, they've got some form of recall on you as an individual. And one of the things that you can guarantee that they would have looked at is whether you own your own house, whether you own your own car, so that if your company does disappear, they've got some recall on your assets, on your personal assets. So it's going to hurt your financial pocket. The only person I've only ever given a personal guarantor to was my commercial bank. If a letting agent was to ask for a personal guarantor, no chance. Because you don't know what they're going to come back and ask for at the end of the tenancy. So for argument's sake, you could argue that the damage that was, when you're handing the property back, the damage that was done to the property was already there. They can argue otherwise. I appreciate that there's inventories at this stage, but if you decide to shut that company down, they've still got you. They're still in control. And the reason why I can say this is because I'm actually a franchisor of a letting agency. So the agency that you see on the left-hand side, Rent Me Now, is my agency. We're franchising that across the country. And one thing that we do ask for, if we can, where possible and applicable, is personal guarantors. So that if there is any form of recall, I don't care if you're a company, I'm coming after you personally. So I don't think it's the best strategy for you to have so many personal guarantors in place, because sooner or later that's going to come unstuck, unless you are intending on keeping them running through a company year on year on year. So I'm hoping, Neil, have you got anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I have actually, Ash. I mean, as you know, I'm a fairly successful businessman. I've been doing business for quite a long time now, and I've got a lot of different businesses, and I've been asked many a time to give a personal guarantor, and like Ash, I've only ever given it once, and that was with the bank. And the reason for that is you don't want to have personal guarantors. One of my mentors from years ago, a multi-millionaire, told me never give a personal guarantor, and he showed me why. Because one of his first businesses he lost. He went bankrupt because the business folded through some technicalities, and they came after him and wiped him out. So I would never personally do it. And here's the other thing I'd say: 20 houses, if you have that, and this is one thing I want you to just check. Really look at your contract and read this carefully, because I saw a case of this recently. I won't say who it was because they're quite a well-known trainer. But you'll notice they're not around at the moment because they folded. Now this is what happened. They had personal guarantors on rent-to-rent properties that were under business leases. Okay, so they're corporate lets. However, if you look at a corporate let and the structure of that, how a letting agent words it, so hopefully you use your own contract and not the letting agent's, because the letting agent will word it so that you're renting that property as a company for the use of your employees. Okay, so I'll just clear that again. So you as a company are renting that property for the use of it by your employees. Okay, so that's what all the letting agents use, and Arsh, I'm sure, is no different on his corporate let. So that's why if I was ever going to do that, it's fine to do a corporate let, but make sure you never use their agreement, use your own, because if, for example, anything ever went wrong, they're going to pull that out and say, well, hold on, you're doing a rent-to-rent agreement, you're subletting. They're going to say you're subletting because you're not actually renting to your own employees. So that's the only thing I'd say. Just make sure you check your small print on that, because that is how that other rent-to-rent person went bust recently. And they lost everything because they had personal guarantees. So you just got to be really careful with anything you do. I personally never do personal guarantees, especially rent to rent. I've never put a single deposit down. Same with Arsh. I've never gone through an agent, purely because it is a good way to do it. And I'm really impressed that you've got 20 houses so quickly. That's amazing. And you can do that very quickly through an agent. However, I think it's a lot. I wouldn't say better, but for me, it's a better strategy for me to build up very slowly and organically. So that's how I did it. I took on one house, so I put some money in one house, and then as soon as that started making profit, which was almost instantly, I took that profit, put it into another house, another house, another house, And it's like a snowball effect. When you're going direct to vendor, you're not putting deposits down, you're not paying high fees and all of this. And it's like a snowball. It just builds and builds and builds. And before you know it, you've got 10 grand of profit every month. And then it just rolls and rolls and rolls and keeps
Neil,
going.
sorry, mate, I'm going to have to
Yeah.
stop you there because we're 40 minutes into a webinar and we've only answered 2 questions.
Okay, yeah, next
Okay,
question.
so I want to keep going. So, a question that come through: What happens if something goes wrong with the property? When we say now, Miriam, you've asked this question because I'm assuming you're worried about liability. Now, in the contracts that we have put in place, the standard procedure is that anything to do with the external structure is the landlord's responsibility. Now, anything internally is generally the person who takes on the rent to rent. So it could be you as the rent to rentor. Alternatively, the beauty with rent to rent is that it all comes down to the negotiation that you lead with the landlord. Now, I've got properties with landlords where they even actually look after the boiler. I've got properties where they look after the external, I look after the internal. So anything to do internally is my responsibility. Anything to do externally is a landlord's responsibility. On one of the rent to rents that I've got at the moment, there seems to be an issue with the roof where a couple of the tiles have slipped off. Now, as that is part of the external structure, that's the landlord's responsibility. So I hope that helps. So quickly going through. So I'm just going to see if there's questions here. How do you say the landlord to take on the property? Right, okay, so we've got 3 questions which are pretty much the same. And Olma, thank you for coming online. They said, what's the best way to find rent to rents? So Neil, do you want to answer this one?
Yeah, sure. I think I'm pretty much the master of this when it comes to sourcing. So I'll give you a couple of tips. And as an example, today I went on a lead, and it was a really bizarre one actually, because the guy was he was a lovely guy, very, very nice guy, very softly spoken, and I met up with him, and he completely took me by surprise. And he said, I absolutely love what you've just told me. The way you've explained it to me, I've had 3 other people talk to me about this rent-to-rent business. I really didn't like it, but the way you've just told me there, I love it. It's fantastic. I want to sign up straight away. And I said, great, okay, so are you happy to go ahead with this house? And he said, not this house, but I've got 17 other houses. I said, 17? And he said, yeah, 17. And I said, okay, but are they all this sort of size, 3-bedroom, 2 reception? He said, oh no, most are bigger. So I said, right, okay. And the way I sourced that lead was through an advert in a newspaper. So that was it. It was so simple. But here's where people go wrong. When it comes to doing your adverts, when it comes to doing leaflets, if you go that route, or any of the other strategies you do, you have to word it in a certain way. If you don't, you won't have any success. I've had some people that have spent hundreds and thousands and hundreds of pounds or thousands of pounds on these adverts, and they said they haven't had any results. And I look at them and say, the reason you haven't is because you haven't worded it correctly. So here's my 3 top tips. Number 1, in fact, we won't talk about adverts first. We'll talk about the way that I source most of my deals. So the way I source most of them is I write letters directly to the landlords. And it's very simple to do. As soon as you see a property come on the market, so there's usually a board that pops up outside to let, you want to do a search on the land registry portal for the title deeds of that house. The title deeds will tell you everything about that property, whether it's got a mortgage, who the mortgage is with, who the owner is, what their name is, where they actually live, because most of the time, hopefully, they won't live at that property, because it tells you in most cases that it's a residential mortgage, so you don't even want to bother with that house. It's not always the case, but a lot of time it is. So I would say 80% of my deals have come through writing letters directly to the landlord. And people say, yeah, but Neil, I don't want to spend £3 on a search. And I don't want to spend 50p on a letter and stamp and all this. Okay, so let me put this into perspective. If it costs you £3.50 for a direct lead, people think that's expensive. but how much is it going to cost you to do a massive leaflet campaign where you spend hundreds of pounds and then it's all delivered? So let's say you spend £500. How many of those landlords actually live in that area? Again, this is where people make a massive mistake. Not usually any of the landlords live in that area where the properties are. Especially say you're in a student area. Do you think the landlord lived in a student area? Of course not. He just, or she, they own those properties and they profit from them. So you might hit, let's say, a few landlords out of your £500, whereas if you're writing direct, you can hit 100 landlords for £350 direct at them. So it took me a long time to master that and get to that point. But now that is where I generate 80% of my leads, and I always advise everybody else to do that as well. What I've just told you there is absolute gold dust. So if you haven't been sourcing very well, I would switch to that strategy because you'll clean up.
Neil, we're gonna have to stop there. We need to keep moving on. So,
okay.
Someone's put, do you let to LHA tenants in rent to rent? I personally do, and I don't have an issue with that. I know that Neil only deals with, you only deal with, professionals or workers, should I say. It all comes down to your tenant segment group. Who you're comfortable to let to, who can you manage, who can you control. I've got well in excess of 500 LHA tenants, and they don't cause me any issues because I've got the systems and procedures in place for that. Now, I know other people that have got 2 LHA tenants, and it's been the bane of their life. So it all comes down to, can you manage them? So let's just quickly moving forward. Someone's put, do you register your name for the utilities? How does that work if you have several properties? Now, that's a relatively straightforward question. Yes, you can put your name on as many utility bills as you want. And, technically speaking, you have to, because on rent to rent, unless you've got another system otherwise, you've got to charge an all-inclusive rent. So that includes council tax, water rates, electricity and gas. You can go to companies like Utility Warehouse where they will bunch up your utilities all into one, so you pay pretty much one bill for that property a month. And I've never used it. I know some people rave and they love it. Other people absolutely despise of it. But unfortunately, I've never had that experience to be able to comment on that. So I hope that helps. So I'm just moving through the questions. Yeah, Neil. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just very quickly say what I do. So obviously I've got a lot of properties, and I had that exact problem as well. Once I reached, I think it was my 6th property, I thought, right, I can't continue like this. I had about 50 accounts, water, council tax, gas, electric, internet, all this different TV license. It got ridiculous. It got completely out of hand. So I actually went to a broker as well, a brokerage service, and they did everything for me. The only thing I don't have with them now is, God, what was it? One thing I don't, is the internet, because they did such a bad job. I took all the internet away, and I now use Virgin Media. So I actually wrote to the CEO, and he created a product completely tailored around what I asked him, which is fantastic, and anybody can now have that. It's called a bulk account, so a bulk Virgin account. So what it means, instead of having all these different account numbers for Virgin Media, which gets really complex, you just have one account and you have one direct line to a person that works there, and they'll deal with everything for you. So that's the way I did it, and I've never had any admin issues since.
Okay, thank you for that. Just going through some of the other few questions. I'm conscious of the fact that we are pretty much very close to time. So, do you need to have the landlord's insurance in your name? Now, Neil, what do you do with that?
No, the landlord insurance is the landlord's responsibility. The only thing you need insurance for as a rent-to-rent person, and again, we haven't got time to go into all this because there's a lot involved here. There's several different insurances, but you need one. You can take out contents insurance if you want to. For me, the contents I put into my houses, although it looks really, really high end, I buy it all second hand from websites. I look out for the really high end stuff, but I make silly offers on them. So for me, it's not worth taking out contents insurance. If everything, but had a problem, it's going to cost me £1,000 to replace it, or 1,500. For me, it's not a big investment. So I don't bother with the contents insurance. But what you do need is your PI insurance, so that's your liability insurance. So you've got to make sure you have that. But again, I'd love to explain all that, but it'll take me about 40 minutes to go through the insurances. So unfortunately, I haven't got time to cover that right now.
Okay, so just quickly going through. Now, here's a great question by Uday. It says, how do you respond as a beginner if a landlord asks for a proven track record, e.g., how many properties do you manage? Now, Neil, I'll let you, because you've started relatively recently, I'll let you start on this, because I suppose in that respect, when I go to a landlord, pretty much the landlord knows a little bit about me because I'm quite well known.
Yeah. Okay. Now,
yeah.
I love this question because it comes up quite a lot. Now, here's the thing, and some people know this, some people don't. I only started doing rent-to-rent on the 1st of May 2014. I built up a huge portfolio worth a serious amount of money in this very short space of time. So when people say to me, oh, I haven't got the experience, I haven't got this, so I can't do it, I don't really accept that, because I was in that position myself. And here, do you know what? It didn't come up for me. So the reason I started training all of the students that came through, so everyone that came through for Arsh's rent-to-rent trainings and things, I trained them all in my sales method. Now, bear in mind, I've been all around the world training this sales technique that I developed over a long time. And when you use this sales technique with a landlord, it doesn't look like you're selling to them. It looks like you're a friend and you're trying to help them out with a problem they're having. And it never comes up. None of my students ever report to me that they have, or my clients, they never say to me, oh, a landlord asked me, about my other properties and stuff. Here's what it comes down to. There's only two things you need to know, and one of them is trust. No one will ever do any business with you if they don't trust you. So if someone's asking you questions like, oh, can you show me other properties you've got, and oh, I'm not sure about this.
Neil?
So that's all it comes down to. You haven't built up enough trust, or you've said something that's made them a bit nervous. Yeah.
Okay, no, that's fine. We lost you for a second.
Arsh, you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. Yeah. Neil, can everyone still hear Neil?
Okay, great. Yeah. So that's what it comes down to. Can you hear me, Ash?
No, you've cut out, mate. So what I'm gonna keep moving on. I'm gonna keep moving on because you cut out there. So we started talking about trust and then you disappeared. So what Neil was talking about is trust, because the only thing that, if someone came to me and asked me, and believe it or not, someone has come to me recently and asked me for one of my properties. Now, it's taken me a while to get around, because believe it or not, it's a housing association. So a housing association has come to me and they said, well, they want to take on one of my HMOs, which, I believe it or not, I've just taken on as a rent-to-rent. So I'm doing a rent-to-rent with the landlord. Now I'm going to potentially do a rent-to-rent with a housing association who's going to do a rent-to-rent to their tenants, which is kind of crazy, but kind of works. So, but you've got to have that trust and that relationship with the person that's going into a property. So if you're approaching a landlord, they're going to assess pretty much everything that you do and the way that you approach them with your proposition, which is going to then give them the guidance as to whether you're going to be the right person for that property. And I hope that kind of helps, because trust is a big thing. If you don't have trust in someone, if you don't believe that they're going to be able to fulfill a contract for 3, 5 or 7 years, why would you do that? And the reason why I can comment on this so personally is because when the housing association approached me, I did my background search and research on that person and on that company as well, because I wanted to make sure that if I give it to a company, that they're not going to go bust, as we spoke about earlier on in the webinar. So I hope that helps. Right, okay. So just there's the last couple of questions, and then we're going to move on to the final parts. And so Sajib has asked, what kind of insurance does the property need to have for rent to rent? Now, going back to the initial question, Neil, you keep cutting out, so if you can mute yourself, that'd be good. The insurance that a landlord requires is pretty much, it depends on what product they've already got. I generally leave it up to the landlord to get the correct insurances. So one landlord called me this week and he's asked me the kind of clientele that we'll be putting in. And I said it could be anything from professionals right down to benefits as well as students, depends on who comes to let the property off me. So I generally put that ball back in the court of the landlord, because it's still their property. It's still their bricks and mortar that they own. All I'm doing is that I'm letting it off them, and then how they insure it is completely down to them. I don't insure contents. The tenants have to insure their own contents. So I'm just getting the landlord to insure their own property. Okay, so I think that's kind of pretty much. Someone's asked, does rent to rent work in London? And directly under, Russell has said, we're constantly looking for more and more properties in South East London. And Russell's a person that has got 20 properties in London. Now, I know that we've got online, and I want to keep it very brief. Now, we've got, let me just have a quick look if they're still online. Actually, we've got a gentleman and a lady. Gentleman's name is JC, and we've got a lady called Mena, and together they're a partnership. And they've actually, since coming on our training in February this year, last time I spoke to them, they'd taken on 15 properties in London. So what I'm going to try and do, see if I can unmute them to see if they can tell us a little bit about the experience. JC, are you online?
Yes, Arsh, how you doing there?
Hello, mate. Bloody hell. Okay, right. So this is something new for us. So JC was a guy that came on a course with his business partner Mena. Mena, are you with us?
Hi, good evening.
How are you? How are you both?
We are very well,
very
thank
well.
you.
Good. Okay. So one of the questions that someone's just asked is, does rent to rent work in London? Now, I need you to keep this very brief, JC and Mena, but in a nutshell, tell us what's been your experience since February.
Well, our experience with you guys' guidance is that it works perfectly. It works every time. It's just about putting in that work ethic. I think one thing that we've realized in the long run is the work ethic. Going to do it every day, day in, day out, you're going to see good results.
Okay, perfect. And so how many properties are you guys currently on?
Well, we're on 13. We're actually trying to close something midday today. So we're just going to find out from the landlord what the situation is. And we've got another 2 coming on beginning of next week.
So you're looking at approximately 15?
Yes.
So you've taken 15 properties on since February. So that's within 8 months, you've taken on 15 properties, which is just under 2 a month, which you would say, well, I would say that's remarkable. And so you guys are living testament that it can work, and it does work. What part of London are you from, JC?
Well, we're actually in South London. So, yeah, all over South London, we've got a number of properties now.
Okay, have you got any in the southeast?
No, the closest we've got one in Kilburn, but no.
Okay, no problem. Because one of the questions asked is that can you help source any more properties in southeast London? Okay, right. Okay, thank you very much for staying online, guys. And I'm assuming I've still yet to speak to Neil just to confirm whether you guys can make it on the weekend. But I'll speak to you about that hopefully tomorrow. So I'm going to unmute you guys. Thank you very much for being online, Mena. Again, always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay, and I'll speak to you shortly. Right, moving on with the webinar. So there's some of the guys that have actually gone out and done really well. Now, I appreciate that we're running slightly over time, so I want to keep this very brief and to the point. we are going to be mentioning a workshop that we're running. I appreciate that. It is very short notice. It is this weekend. And the reason why we've put it at such short notice is because this is a time that, remember, we spoke earlier about how you want to get to financial freedom, your commitment. Now, I'm going to be testing your commitment because this weekend, and we've only, believe it or not, we've only got 5 spaces left, and there's the best part of 60 of you online at the moment. I'm asking for 5 of you to show me some commitment. Come on a workshop where I'll be teaching you, as well as Neil will be showing you exactly what we do and how we bring in landlords. And the reason why we say that is because we think that 80% of people fail at rent to rent because they go to places like letting agents. And I appreciate that someone online tonight said that they do quite well from letting agents, but they're actually spending a lot of money with letting agents. But it's all very well going out and going out to meet the landlord, because if you haven't got the negotiation technique or the sales technique to bring in the property or bring in the deal, guess what, guys? You can have 1,000 leads and you won't convert any of them. The key to all of it is negotiation. If you've got the negotiation skill sorted and dealt with, you should be able to turn 4 out of every 5 properties into an actual deal. More importantly, we're going to be showing you how to focus on your marketing on just the strategies so that it doesn't allow you to aim almost like at a dartboard where you're thrown all over the place. Focus is what we're going to be looking at. So as the guy from, I never know how to pronounce his name, so as the author from Rich Dad Poor Dad says, if you want to be a successful entrepreneur, the 2 things that you've got to first master is sales and marketing, because if you don't know how to market, you're not going to be able to bring in the sales. Remember that thing about supply and demand? You've got to know everything about it. And as we're running on, I'm going to be telling you that this weekend, which is the 31st of October and the 1st of November, so it's a Saturday and Sunday, we're going to be focusing on 2 days. So it's based in Dudley in Wolverhampton in the West Midlands. So on Saturday, we're going to be looking at how to identify and how to dominate your ground and your goldmine area. How to get in front of a large amount of landlords. So how to market yourself, how to put yourself in that position. How to create a high-end finish for low-end budget. So we're going to be taking you through to A to Z. So if you're a complete beginner, where do you start? What do you look for? Where do you look for? How do you determine whether it's going to work for you? Once you're in front of the landlords, what do you say to the landlords? Once you've got the property, how do you set the property up? Once you've got the property all set up, how do you market the property? How do you find the tenants? When the tenants come to you, how do you put it to them in a proposition where they're going to stay with you for a long term? The contracts that you use, and how to stay legally compliant. But more importantly, going back to Saturday, we'll be looking at the figures, how to calculate the numbers. More importantly, how to make sure that the deal works for you. Now that's on the Saturday. On the Sunday, what I'm going to ask Neil is that we might throw a little caveat into the Sunday. Now, if you wake up early enough, one thing that I've been doing for the last couple of weeks has been going to a boot market, which is massive, close to the venue. So it's about 15 minutes away from the venue. And if we wake up at 6 o'clock and we get to the boot market for 7, providing that we can get to the boot market back between 7 and 9, we'll throw this in as an added bonus. So the buying patterns and sales and psychology. So hopefully the stuff that you've learned on the Saturday will test with you at the boot market to see what you buy on the Sunday. And we'll be talking you through the exact sales process for taking a prospective landlord from the first letter and the first phone call, so from the first point of contact straight through to a deal, and how to overcome the objections. So as someone says, how's a landlord going to buy into me? We'll be going through so many live interactions through the day, but by the end of it, there should not be an objection that you shouldn't be able to overcome. But more importantly, you'll learn Neil's relationship selling model. Now, here's some of the last courses that we ran. You'll notice that in March this year, I was actually filmed for a program called Britain's Benefit Tenants. Channel 4 were filming us for this course. Now, on the second photo on the right-hand side, the person on the left-hand side of me is JC that we just spoken to. Now, this was in February, and since then he's gone off and took 15 other properties. Now, you'll notice that it's quite a large room. We have 2 large rooms. We had 70 people in this room at that point. Now, we've only got a few spaces. Like I said, we've got 5 spaces available just for this one course. So, and this is the last course of this year, and we won't be running the next one until well into 2016. So spaces are limited, time is limited. What I'm testing now is your commitment. You've said that you want to make it happen. I'm giving you the opportunity to work with us and make it happen. Now, remember, we're going to be talking about the advanced negotiations, which allows you to increase your conversion rate from 1 in 5 to 4 in 5. So to move from 20% conversion rate right up to 80% conversion rate. And we'll give you 3 times where you can do a live negotiation session. And it's called a relationship selling training method. Now, here's some of the people. Now, if you remember, I've given you a live testimonial tonight, and that was never planned because I never knew JC was going to be online. But here's some of the people that have gone off and actually done extremely well in rent to rent. And the one thing that I haven't mentioned is that there are 2 ways for you to learn this weekend. One of them is by attending in person in the classroom with me and Neil. Alternatively, if you can't attend in person, I'm going to allow you the opportunity to live stream into the course, so you can ask questions like you've done tonight. But instead of just looking at a screen, you'll actually be seeing us present. So here's some more testimonials, and here's some of the people that have left the live testimonials after the course. So just showing you, there's a lot of people that have attended this course over the last couple of years, have gone off and done extremely well. Now, JC, who's on the top left-hand corner, has got 15 properties. Now, Deborah actually took on 30 properties, so she's doing extremely well. And the one thing that people want to do is they want to set up this business as a rent-to-rent business. Now, it's going to get to a point where you're not going to be able to do it yourself. As Neil said himself earlier this evening, he's got a property manager in place. In order for the property manager to know exactly what Neil is thinking, Neil would have put everything into something called a mind map. Now, here what we've got on screen is what Neil's mind maps are. So the marketing mind maps, and one of the mind maps is the furnishing mind map. So Joe, who's the property manager, doesn't actually have to keep coming back to Neil and say, well, what do I do now? The mind map shows Joe exactly what to buy, where to buy, how to buy, and the price to pay. And this is all down to the systems that you implement from day one, which will make your transaction or your journey as a property professional so much easier. Now, one person asked on the webinar tonight, I can't unfortunately make the workshop, but I want to purchase your documents. I'm going to allow you to purchase the documents tonight. Unfortunately, it has to be at the same cost as if you were attending the course. And I've put all these documents that you use on a day-to-day basis on something called the Key to Success. So that includes the rent-to-rent document, the mind maps, the guarantor documents, a legally binding tenancy agreement. And now, if you do rent to housing benefit tenants, the housing benefit documents, the templates of sales schedules, how to keep your tenants on top of their rents, giving them rent schedules, rent documents, how to increase the rents, gas safety documents, and so much more. So here's what you're going to be receiving. The first day, the rent-to-rent training. Second day, the sales training, the management agreement, the legal documents, the template letters and the adverts, the Key to Success USB, the meals on each of the days, the memberships to the rent-to-rent secret group. So the learning doesn't just end in the room. What happens is that we add you into a secret Facebook group, which is created by me and Neil. And after, you get to go into that group with all the previous course attendees, and you get to ask whatever questions you want. And we have people logging in every day asking questions. So the learning is constant and continuous, which means that you also get a lot of follow-up from myself and Neil as well. You also get a one-on-one call with Neil after the course, as well as lifetime support, which is priceless. It is this weekend, so there is commitment involved here. Saturday the 31st and Sunday the 1st of November at the De Vere Village Spa Hotel. Here's some of the rooms that you can book from the hotel direct. And if you stop over, you actually get to use some of their spa facilities as well. Now, I'm going to keep moving forward. You can book on by going on my website tonight, which is arshellahi.com/events. And you can attend both of the days for just $595. Now, this is the last time that we run this course at this price. After New Year, it is going up to $995, and there will not be any discount of that. We've been testing this course for the last 2 years, and it's been extremely successful. And so for $595, you can have the whole package, and believe it or not, you can bring a guest for free as well. So for $595, you've got 2 people attending 2 days. So when you break it down, it's actually £149 per person for 2 people per day. And more importantly, you then become eligible for the Rent to Rent Mastermind Day, which Neil runs. So that will be something that Neil talks to you on the event about that. Now, remember, we talked about return on investment. Now, if you're working on the basis that one property is producing a cash flow of $595 a month, that will give you a return of 100% return on investment on one per house, which over a year is going to give you a return of 1,200%, 1,200%. So there you have it, guys. It's this weekend. We've answered a lot of questions tonight. We've answered questions about landlords, how to find landlords, where to find landlords, the questions that you've got to overcome to get landlords. Are there any other questions that you guys want to ask before we move on? If you've got any other questions, why not give Neil or Arsh a call on our mobiles, preferably not tonight, but potentially tomorrow. You've got Neil's mobile number there, as well as my mobile number thereafter. Now, Miriam has asked, why don't you please do a workshop in London? Now, the problem that we've got, Miriam, is that we can't do a workshop in London on the prices that we charge, purely because it doesn't work. And not only that, we find that we get the same amount of people in London as if we do it in the Midlands. And by doing it in London, we alienate the people from the north. By doing it in the south, by doing it up in the north, we alienate people from the south. And with all due respect, life exists outside London. So someone's just put, how do we access webinar of the course, and is it the same fee? Yes. The course, the live streaming is as we would be doing tonight, but you actually get to see us live. So we'll be presenting to you live. It is the same cost, so it is $595, and you get all the course material. So I'll be emailing you the course material as early as tomorrow, as well as the registration links for you to register for that. Now, someone's put that sadly they're unable to attend due to childcare commitments. Why don't you live stream it? Live stream it from the comfort of your own home. We actually record the live stream, and everyone, regardless of whether you attend or whether you live stream, you get a copy of that recording. It's an audio clip as opposed to the visual clip, so you get that as an added bonus. So that if you are at home and you're thinking, well, I've had to pop out now for 10 minutes, you'll get that clip. As long as you make note of the time that you've gone out, you'll get that clip as to what you've missed. More importantly, 6 months down the line, you may become stagnant and you may want to have a bit of a refresh. That recording's there for you. So that's just something to take into consideration. So someone's asked if we can have our numbers again. So that's Neil's number there. He likes it, I think, when you call him approximately around 2 o'clock in the morning, preferably drunk, and declare your undying love for him. I think that's when he really likes it. Or by all means, you can give me a call on my number there. So that's kind of it. The rest now is up to you. Tonight we've talked a lot about you guys as individuals, but more importantly, the questions and what you would think, the questions as to what you would think you would come across a landlord. When you come across a landlord, what's the questions they're going to ask? There is no such thing as a question that can't be answered. There's no such thing as a problem. There's always a solution. Now, what you do from here on is completely up to you. We can only guide you to a point where we can tell you how it's worked. We can even show you people, or even allow you to talk to people who have gone off and done this extremely and successfully well in areas where people think it's impossible. Now, okay, so here's a great question. Someone's put, how do we book onto a course? So I'm going to give you a live demonstration. So if you go to my website, which is arshellahi.com, you're going to have a look at the events. Now, if you're looking to live stream the event, you go to the bottom and you click live stream. And in the far right hand corner here, you're going to see some testimonials and you press add to cart. Now, that's if you want to live stream. And the reason why we've got two different ways is because when you book on, it tells me which way you're going to be attending. Now, if you want to come in person, you go to the events, you go to Neil Ward R2R special offer. And again, you've got if you're coming in single by yourself, you add the top one. If you're coming with a business partner, you add the second one because it allows for both of you to come on. So that's give you a rundown as to how it all works. Again, with anything, I'm more than happy to have a chat with any of you if you want. Tomorrow, we're going to close the special offer pretty much, hopefully, the end of tonight, or we'll probably give you until tomorrow morning. But we don't want to be running it pretty much any time thereafter. So if you like the thought of it, if you like the sound of it, why not give us a call? If you want to have a chat about it, you're more than welcome to. I'm going to unmute Neil now. Just see if we can get him for the last part. Neil, are you still online?
Yeah, can you hear me, Ash?
Yes, I can, yeah.
Oh, that's why I couldn't hear myself talking. Okay, you had a special button there to mute me.
No. No, okay. So Neil, if we're just gonna, have you got anything to add to tonight's webinar, my friend?
No, I think we've really covered everything. There's some great questions there, and I think it was a great webinar because we had some absolute beginners right through to a professional with 20 houses, and yet the interesting thing was you could see that it doesn't matter what level you're at, there's still questions there. That the gentleman there with 20 houses, he still had questions, So I don't think you ever get to a point where you stop learning, and that's the great thing. And of course, with Arsh and I, we do we've got lifetime support with a Facebook group. We do coaching and mentoring afterwards for those that need it. I run the mastermind day as well, which is a very low cost day to cover the hotel costs and things. So it's just, there is no reason working with us why you couldn't be successful in rent to rent. And I've said it all the time, the people who aren't successful, who come through the training, is because they give up or they don't commit their time to it. And that's the only reason. If you commit your time to it and you keep going, you will be successful. There's no way you can't be, especially with the training we do, as well as the marketing and the negotiations experience. You can't not be successful if you commit to it. So I think that's all for me. So thank you so much for logging in and joining us this evening. I hope it was valuable for you, and I'll pass you back over to Arsh. So thank you.
Fantastic, and it's comments like the next comments which really makes it worthwhile. So Sarisa said, a really good inspirational webinar. Thanks, Neil and Arsh. Well, it's reasons for that we do it, because we like to see us make a change, and we've changed so many people's lives. JC and Men are taking on 15 properties. They're well in excess of 5 figures per month. What can you do with that money? Now, if they hadn't come on the course, would they have ever gone off and done that. But they're a true testament to the fact that they've done extremely well. So on that note, I'd like to thank you all very much for being on. I appreciate that it's Tuesday evening. Go and enjoy the rest of your time. Enjoy the time with your families. And no doubt, I'm hoping that I will see you on the weekend. If not, I'll see you very soon. Take care. Good night. God bless.